Yes.
It is a humorous thought, though.
Well, John, Jeremy said yesterday that the lawsuits basically fallen apart. The proposed lawsuits that they were trying to instigate.
Well, they didn't even raise enough money to hire a lawyer, so.
Do you think the public TV stations and the Sci-Fi Channel, who's just picked up Doctor Who, could have any influence on that, saying that overseas sales are really strong in America? We have PBS stations picking it up again. We have a cable station picking it up again.
Sorry,
Yeah,
no.
have any effect?
I once had dinner with a nice man called Ray Kraft, who used to be, who was last no longer with us. He was the president of Lionheart Films at the time. This is about 6-7 years ago. We had a very pleasant time. At the end of it, he said, Colin, I went to tell an American accent, Colin, when you go back to England, could you go and see Michael Grade and tell him we really need more product? At the moment, you're making, I think at that time it was 26 episodes a year. We really need at least 52. And he was halfway through this, I said to him, hang on a sec. The first thing is I have no access to Michael Grade whatsoever. I mean, a lead actor in an American TV series would probably know the guy who's in charge of the TV station that was making the program. That doesn't work in England. Actors are employees like anybody else. I have no say whatsoever in the decisions made by the top brass of the BBC. And if I meet them, it was only for a nod at a cocktail party or something, and probably I've got a clue who I am.
Same thing holds true here.
Oh, I'm not sure.
No, that's not true. In America,
No, that's not what
stars
Dracula tells me.
rule Hollywood.
It's both true and false.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that there is, I mean, between Cagney and Lacey and the people who make the programme, there is contact.
Right.
Well, that was fans.
No, but what I mean is that the head of the TV station, and besides they're paid about 20 times more than we get paid. If you're paying people that kind of money, you want to know what their opinion is. If you're paying someone peanuts, you don't care. And we are on comparative peanuts. And if I'd been doing Doctor Who in America, I'd be a richer person than I am now. Boy, there is. I mean, if you bear in mind that this is an organisation which annually has received more in income from Doctor Who than it costs to make that year's programmes. It's got 28 years of product to sell. Any other organisation would have a vested interest in keeping that product going, wouldn't they? But because the income from the sales of the programme don't go back into the department that make the programmes, it just goes into the BBC coffers to spread thinly over the whole organisation. The programme making arm of the BBC, the series and sales departments, has no incentive whatsoever to make more of it. Now, you've also got producers there who have projects they want to get financing for. They say, look, I've got this book I want to adapt. Now, if there's 10 of them coming saying, I want to make this programme, I want to make this programme, and there's no one coming saying, I want to make Doctor Who, then Doctor Who has got to be fought for by somebody, which is what John Nathan Turner did for a long time. There ain't no one there batting for it until Powell goes at the end of next year. He's announced his intention to depart. Then I think it's extremely likely that there's going to be any further product. It's my opinion.
Do you feel that your long-term plan of development of the Doctor character to slowly bring them to be a more likable character may have been a mistake, and you would want to change that? And also, do you feel that during your time off the show, when you were vocal against the fact of being taken off, that hurt you in the future, that you were eventually ousted from the show because of it?
To deal with the second point first, I wasn't actually that vocal. It's one of those things that's been perpetuated by fan magazines and newspapers that Colin Baker spoke out. And maybe I should have done, but I didn't actually. I was quite careful not to criticise anybody for the very simple reason that I didn't want to be hampered by the baggage of being a critic of the powers that be. I accepted it and got quietly on with my career. So I don't think that's a reason. I think everything's much more casual than that. I don't think any personal attitude to me caused any decisions of any kind. I think I was a tiny ball. I think Michael Grade's hardly aware of my existence, really. The first part of your question, what was that about?
It was about the development of your character.
Oh yeah. No, I wouldn't change that at all. If you give away everything on page 1, you've got nothing to write for the next 99 pages. And if you envisage you've got a potential long run to go, you want to hold some things back. And I thought it was quite exciting and quite interesting to have a character who was a little inaccessible, a little enigmatic, a little unlikable, apparently. You know, I don't know if you have this experience in your lives, and I certainly do in mine. The people who are my best friends now are the ones I didn't actually like very much when I first met them. And I can think of one or two very close friends who I actively loathed when I first met them.
We didn't stand each other.
We couldn't stand each other.
We
did
don't
we?
like so much now.
And I always remember that there's a book called Pride and Prejudice, which you may or may not have read, and there's a character in that called Darcy, who at the end of the book turns out to be the hero. But for the first 2/3, everyone thinks he's a deeply unpleasant, selfish swine, because he doesn't go around wearing his virtues on his sleeve. And I think those characters are just more interesting, and I wanted to play the Doctor that way.
Well, I personally, and I think a lot of other people probably in this room found it pretty interesting. We enjoyed it, and I didn't think it was an unnatural development of the character to become somewhat bored and tiresome of, just sort of not having this sort of feeling of the fact that to back off and that, well, they may be evil, but they have their good in them too. I mean, sometimes you become frustrated in the fact that, well, they're in the way, they are my enemies, and that maybe, I should do them in. And I mean, the idea of your doctors need to be a little bit more kind of, at times, somewhat personally violent at times. And I didn't really find that as being a problem, but I know that there was a lot of criticism in many other fan presses and articles stating the fact that your doctor was at times too violent. That I almost seen as a natural progression. I mean, you can only deal with so much in your, 900-year life of dealing with these alien races and pressing into them. I thought it was a natural progression. I didn't really
And it opens up debate as well, doesn't it? I mean, if the character was just slightly different all the time, but basically the same, if you have 12 versions of yourself, as we've discovered with the Valliard, who is a potential interface between two aspects of the Doctor, if you like, there's going to be all sorts of qualities there. It's more interesting, I think.
Isn't it true that every new Doctor has a period where they have to be accepted by the fans? Even,
Oh, yeah.
Every new Doctor has to go through that?
Yeah. I mean, I suppose the hardest job ever was for poor old Peter after 7 years of Tom. And Tom being such a strong and particular Doctor, and that had such a huge following. I mean, every interview I ever get with kind of non-fan magazines, i.e., the local newspaper in a town, says, "Where's your scarf?" Now, the only Doctor ever to wear a scarf was Tom, but I mean, the scarf is so associated with a lot of people's idea of what Doctor Who's about. So Peter, I mean, had a tough job there actually, which is why he chose to play totally opposite, kind of a very neutral, preppy sort of image. Yeah, you have to overcome, in that case, almost a generation of children who watch the programme. I'm picking on children because they're the ones who start watching something for the first time. So a young child will have seen as his Doctor only Doctor Who, only Tom Baker for 5 or 6 years, and suddenly they've got to change. Nobody likes change.
Wow.
Well, most people
The
don't like
problem
change.
here too was like when they premiered the show, both on commercial and public TV, they always started off with Tom Baker. They didn't start from the beginning on up to give us an idea of what the show was all about.
Because I suppose they thought they couldn't start with black and white. You can't start showing it in black and white. So they had 7 years of Tom Baker to show to really get people hooked. It's a sensible way of starting.
Wow.
Speaking of...
While we're on the historical note of Doctor Who, do you know anything about the last season, either of you? Do you know anything of the last season of Doctor Who, particularly the sort of unknown story of Penacasada? The last season of...
the season that was not
That was not
taken
aired.
in favor of Trial of a Time Lord.
All the stories that were like you were supposed to, your character was supposedly to meet the Ice Warriors with.
No, all I know was that I read The Nightmare Fair and thought it was a darn good story, and was disappointed not to make it. I knew that there was an Autons in Singapore story, and that's all I know about it.
Well, they've been novelized, I think.
Yeah, but not one of them.
Oh, one of them, yeah.
Not Penacasada.
And no Autons. Maybe that's it.
Wow.
Only Night May Affair was
I guess that's
novelized.
Yeah. I think it was anyone that got as far as a full script.